As long as Andrew's going to participate, we'll be all right. But he hasn't said anything about seeing my screen yet. I just amuse myself, that's all. Well, let's see what is going on. We'll switch to the other thingy while I wait for somebody to say they can see it. And then we can start the show. So what's going on here? The Dow's flat, the S&P's kind of flat. I mean, they're technically green. The NASDAQ with a little bit of a move up. And the Russell with a little bit of a move down. And what else? The dollar is just sort of stuck where it is. Oil came down a bit. I wonder what the EIA thing was like. We'll take a look at that if I ever get a confirmation someone can see my screen. Gasoline is there. Natural gas is falling back again. Natural gas is getting very complicated. It used to be so easy to predict natural gas, and now it's complicated. Uh-oh. I think something happened to Andrew. I'm worried about him. Andrew. He jumped right up and said he could hear the audio, but that's the last I heard. Now nobody's participating. It's crazy. I don't understand you guys. I really don't. Let's see. We got Apple, we got gold, we got silver. No, nobody's doing anything very exciting. I thought that the oh, there's Andrew. He's back. We out for lunch? All right, cool. Andrew says we can go. The hell with all you other guys who don't participate. What was I going to do? Oh yeah, okay. So we talked about this. Blah 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 blah. Stuff is happening. What's important? Oh, the oil. Let's take a look at the thingy for the oil. Largest S&P companies by market cap. I wonder why I was looking at that. Do you guys remember? Well, I'll tell you though, the S&P 500, you get past 50, and that's Morgan Stanley, $150 billion, not even $150 billion. Whereas Apple is $3 trillion, so that's 20 times the size of Morgan Stanley. Just Apple. So imagine how little the rest of the index matters after you get past the first 50 stocks. And you got Microsoft right behind them, 2.5 trillion. Google, I don't know what to do with Google. I mean, do you count them twice and say they're a $3 trillion company? Do you count each? I mean, do you count them and say did you throw this out completely? What are you supposed to do with that? Amazon, 1.3 trillion. So both Googles are bigger than Amazon. Nvidia, only $1 trillion. Come on, Nvidia. Tesla, flirting with $1 trillion again. Facebook, not out of the ballpark. Berkshire Hathaway, not out of the ballpark. Then it drops off quick. Then you're down to Visa, and only $500 billion for Visa. Only $500 billion for JP Morgan. None of these people can function without JP Morgan, so it's kind of weird. Used to be the bankers were bigger than all the businesses. Now it's no longer the case. Well, it probably would be the case if we had rational valuations, but we don't. Anyway, what were we going to talk about? We weren't going to talk about that. We were going to talk about the petroleum status report for the day. And I forgot to look at it, frankly, I got to tell you. So it's going to be a surprise to me. I was busy doing some stuff today. All right, let's see. Week ending September 8th. Sounds like a long time ago, doesn't it? But it can't be the 15th, so it has to be the 8th. Friday. All right. I guess it's the 13th already. Seems like Friday was a long time ago. Refinery inputs, blah, blah, blah. Refineries at 93.7%. Oh, dear. Wow. All right. We got to look at that carefully. That's a big number. And this is not the proper report. Crude inventories, blah, blah, over the 4 weeks, blah, 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 blah. Okay, Commercial inventories increased by 4 million barrels, which is what we expected after the holiday. Crude oil inventory is 2% below the total, which is very, very little below. Gasoline inventories by 5.6. Holy shit, this is a terrible report. Distillate increased too by 3.9. Oh my God. 4 plus 4 is 8. 8.5, 13.5 million barrel build between oil and product. That's insane. But that's a snapback you get after the holidays. We've been talking about this for weeks, right? This is what happens. Before, let's see, here we go. Like I'm an expert on when the holiday was. All right, apparently this was a holiday. So the week before the holiday, which would be the report of the whatever date that was, the 26th, 25th. So, no, I'm sorry, this is a holiday weekend. I'm sorry, this is the week before the holiday. So the week before the holiday, a large amount of people go to fill up their tanks with gas, right? And they go on a trip. They use the gas, and then they come back and they fill up their tanks again. So you have two big draws in a row around the holiday. You have the people who are gassing up because they're going somewhere, and then you have the people who come back and need gas. All right? But now everybody's filled up their tank last week. So now this week, you're going to have a snapback, right? You're going to have less people filling up their tanks because they just went on a great big trip. And that also has a factor. Maybe they're not going anywhere now. Not only that, though, but you've got less truck activity over the holidays. So that drops demand a bit too. So you can almost always rely on this. There's going to be this uptick in consumption of gasoline, but there's no net real uptick of consumption. It's just people filling up their tanks all at the same time causes an apparent uptick. But then once everybody has filled their tanks up and everybody's home and they're not doing excess driving, all of a sudden the next week, nobody needs gas. Not nobody, obviously, but you know what I mean. Enough less people where you have this massive buildup of gasoline. And it's a real easy thing to bet on. Like every year, this sort of thing happens. Now, we're still elevated. Nobody's paying much attention to, well, I wouldn't say that. Nope. I mean, we're not getting a huge crash so far, but this report is going to lead to a decline. What is this? Why is this how weird? Uh-oh. Petroleum status report. Ooh, it's like broken. We were just on it. That's not fair. I don't want that. Oh, I see. We did that status report. We should have done this. This one's not working. That's why we got the wrong one in the first place. It's broken. They don't want us to look at it. Summary. And now I've never seen this before. This is so weird. It's an important piece of information. Weekly petroleum status report. This week in petroleum. I don't know what you're telling us. Rig count, permitted well depth, blah, 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 distribution, futures prices. None of this is really helping. Crude oil stockpiles. We're in the low end of the range there. Questions, and that's because of Biden draining the strategic petroleum reserve more than anything else. Selected questions from Dallas Fed. Higher, significantly higher, no change. How do you expect your firm's drilling? Oh, that. Okay, don't care about that either. Nope. But this page is not working. Petroleum status report. Weekly petroleum status report. Maybe this one is better. No, it's the same page. Wow. All right, so we'll never know. But the bottom line is, it's exactly what we expected. There's a build after the holiday, and now we don't know what normal is until we get into next week or something like that. But the thing is, what's the next catalyst for oil? The OPEC, the Saudis and Russia and everybody, they didn't do anything actually. All they did is continue the production cuts they've had all year through the end of the year. They didn't cut more, but when you read it in the papers, they make it sound like they cut another 1 million barrels. It's like as if they cut 1 million barrels every month. It makes no sense, but they constantly report it as if they cut it. But all they do is they renew it, and everybody acts like it makes some huge difference. The real story should be the Saudis and Russia have cut back millions of barrels of crude, and it's made no difference to the energy market. Not only that, though, but it's not just the actual amount of crude that's available that determines the price. A major factor on price is the expectation. If there's no buffer and you have a tight market doesn't mean there's no supply. A tight market means there's no buffer. So in other words, if the good humor guy has put 5 cones on the front of the put 5 cones up on the front of the truck, and the kids grab the 5 cones, right? That doesn't mean that the last cone the kids are going to bid $4 for it, because the guy's got 100 more cones in the back. And that's what commodities are like, okay? Because if the supply is being artificially curtailed, there's no risk that it's going to be cut off. In fact, you have the negative effect, because there's plenty of unused supply sitting around that could be ramped up at any time. So you don't have the fear of a disruption like a war or something like that interrupting supply. That's a part of the pricing profile of commodities. Could there be a demand shock? If there could be a demand shock, I want to make sure I'm always buying my warehouse full of whatever it is I want, right? And that includes oil. But if there's plenty of storage, and if there's plenty of and if you know that should something happen to Iranian oil, or should something happen to Russian oil, that Saudi Arabia has capacity, unused capacity, to send an extra 2, 3, 4 million barrels a day onto the market, well, then you're not going to price up the futures. You're not going to have any kind of panic in the future pricing. Just like the regular market futures anticipate what the Fed's going to do in the future supply of money. The Fed has the market artificially tight. It would be easy for them to loosen policy. Therefore, the markets are continuing without much fear. Whether the Fed loosens or not, should the market tick down, that they're going to jump back in, because they're terrified of letting the market fall at any given time. So that's what they call a Fed put. There's a put underneath the Fed, because they're not realistically going to let the market fall. Now that depends on other factors too. Who's the president? What does he usually say? Who's in charge of Congress? What do they usually say? You got to look at all the factors that are going to be involved. Like under Trump during COVID, there was no freaking way they were going to let the market fall. So we were just betting and betting and betting on higher and higher markets, because they wouldn't let it go down. They wouldn't even let it correct. They wouldn't let it pull back 5%. They freaked out, because Trump based his success on the market. The market was like a scorecard for him. So he would do whatever it took to keep the market going up. Biden, not too different, and frankly, no president is that different. None of them want to see the Dow go down, but it did happen under Bush. They went down significantly. Sometimes you can't do anything about it. Sometimes you don't have the confidence of the people. Whatever, doesn't matter. The point is, there's a market force, and there are people who are going to try to adjust it, and the Fed is constantly trying to adjust it. and ignore market forces. And we talked about that today. See how we transition? And we talked about that today. Because if it ever resolves itself, did I click on you? Yeah. So I said it's been fun pretending the Fed has gone away, but if you look at the CPI report, we just jumped up to 6%. Not 6, 0.6, but 0.6 is 7.2% for, you know, a year annualized. You know, we still have a lot of inflation. The Fed's target is 2%, and we're at 7.2%. So is the Fed done raising? Is the Fed going to reverse? Not very likely. But what is going on is our government is still spending $2 trillion, and there's real money, $2 trillion more than they take in. They can't stop. And I mean, to stop, you either have to cut what you're spending money on, which we've already seen is now, and you have to realize the discretionary budget is nothing. It's not even $1 trillion. It's like $500 billion. The total discretionary budget about $600 billion. 10% of the total budget is discretionary spending. Everything else is military, Social Security, Medicare, things like that. Things the government, the government doesn't have the ability to pull them back. So to say, oh, we'll cut discretionary and balance the budget, how are you going to do that? The whole discretionary budget is $600 billion, and if you cut that, we have no government services, and if you do that, everything collapses, and you have no country. So that's not really an option. We've already cut everything. We've been cutting since Reagan. We've been cutting government. It hasn't really made a difference, has it? I mean, it's allowed our military to grow to be much bigger than everything else, but anyway, so you can't cut. We have, and again, it's $2 trillion. We collect, obviously we're not collecting, we're collecting, if we have a $6.4 billion government package and we have a $2 trillion deficit, that means we're only collecting $4.4 trillion, right? So collections are $4.4 trillion. Half of those collections are Social Security and Medicare. So half of the government's money is for the entitlement programs. And this is the problem, is all these years they've been stealing that money and not putting it into the entitlement programs like they were supposed to. So of course now the entitlement programs are failing because nobody put the money in they were supposed to put in. The government said, oh, here's some extra money. Social Security goes, I think we need that like in 30 years. And the government's been like, oh, yeah, 30 years. You know, and that's how we got to where we are now with the Social Security programs and Medicare, is we never put in the money when we had it to secure the fund for the future. Al Gore's lockbox. See, we talk about Al Gore a lot today. Al Gore's lockbox. Everybody made fun of him when he was running for president. I want to take this money and put it in the lockbox and make sure nobody touches it. This was his debate. They made great fun of it on Saturday Night Live. He was totally right. That was exactly what had to be done. We didn't do it though. We instead we said lockbox, show us how to take that money out, and that's what happened. It's so sad. Oh my God. Anyway, it really is awful. So anyway, so you take the 2 trillion deficit, subtract it from the federal spending, right? So therefore we have 4.4 trillion in collections, otherwise the budget would be balanced. So here's the problem. Half of that money, Social Security and Medicare entitlement money, right? Whatever they use it for, but the point is it's not taxes. the tax portion of the collections is only $2.4 trillion. And it's 2 trillion from you and me, and from you and me, and it's only 400 billion from corporations. That's a whole nother sickness in and of itself. But the point being that there is no freaking way that the government can make up their collections by raising taxes, because our taxes, our $2 trillion contribution to this thing, would have to be doubled in order to start balance, in order just to balance the budget, not even paying anything off, just to balance it. They would have to double taxes. Or more rationally, you charge corporations 1.5 trillion instead of 0.4 trillion, you charge them 1.5 trillion dollars, and then we have to make up $1 trillion, raise taxes 50% on people. Still though, you're like, I know you're saying no freaking way. It's not even a thing. And of course we can't afford that either. Therefore, we're fucked. You got to accept it. There's no way you can fix this. Not without completely and radically restructuring everything, which would cause huge disruptions and so on and so forth. And we're not even spending our $2 trillion on climate, and we're not even spending the money I'm sorry, $2 trillion a year. We're not even spending $2 trillion a year that we need to spend to fix climate. And we're also not spending the $1 trillion a year we need to do to fix infrastructure for the next 5 or 7 years. So we're not fixing our infrastructure. We're not, I know it's in the Build Back Better, or whatever the hell his latest thing is called, but it's nothing. It's just, it's putting a Band-Aid on a your arm's cut off and they put on a Band-Aid kind of thing. It's just pointless. We need to spend $2 trillion a year from now until 2050, which is quite a lot of time, of years, 25 years, let's say. So it's like 25 years at $2 trillion a year. We need to spend about $50 trillion, just the US, not counting the rest of the world. We're to spend, probably much more, more than us, but not that much more, let's say 3 times more. But we have to spend $50 trillion in the next 25 years to stop the planet from falling apart. We're not doing that. We're not going to do that. How are we going to do that without just going massively, massively into debt? I mean, I guess you could set up some gigantic UN fund that goes massively into debt and then eventually defaults. I mean, what else are you going to do? Somebody's got to do this at some point. And I wrote about that this morning. Like, it's the lack of will is astonishing. The fact that we've gotten to this point, the fact that I'm not going to credit this guy. He's talking about the war and crap like that and the even destruction. But 20 years after that, 1985, here's young Carl Sagan and also young Al Gore, is his first year in office, testifying and saying, hey, the planet is falling apart. We have to do something now or we're going to be totally screwed. So fast forward 40 years later, and Al Gore is old and we're totally screwed. And I mean totally screwed in a way that, like, I feel bad for my kids. I feel really bad for my kids. I feel very, very bad for my grandchildren, which I don't have yet. But they're not going to live in the nice world we grew up in. And this whole world is going to turn against us. We're like a bad infection. It's going to fight off the world. The planet will fight off. Because the Earth itself doesn't care if it's 80 degrees, 90 degrees, 70 degrees, 150 degrees, minus 150 degrees. The world does not give a shit. the planet will be fine. You know, it'll just be like, we look at Venus. Venus is like 400 degrees on the surface because they are the ultimate greenhouse gas case, as Carl Sagan was explaining in his thing. Venus is 90% carbon in their atmosphere, carbon dioxide in their atmosphere. It all reflects back, it all gets trapped, it all ends up in a cycle, and the planet just boils away. But that's fine, that's Venus. Mars, their atmosphere blew off. They don't have any atmosphere left. They do actually. I mean, there's like, you can see some cool pictures from Mars rovers, like little clouds on Mars and things like that, but they're very thin. They've got some water vapor, they have some ice, they have some remnants of their old atmosphere. It used to be a habitable type planet, not anymore. The planet is what it is. Most planets are not inhabitable by human beings. This is going to become one of them. That's what's happening. I even told my kids, I'm like, don't take things so seriously. I said, don't worry about your job and your career and things like that. Just go and enjoy yourself. For God's sakes, who knows how many years you have left to enjoy yourself? I mean, it's horrible. Just 5,000 people just got killed in a flood from a cyclone that just like lifted up lifted up huge amounts of water and dropped it and burst a dam. And then that dam burst led to a huge river of water that went down to the next dam and broke that one. And that dam was right in front of a major city and just pushed people out to sea. It went so fast. Stuff's going to start happening all the time. We're lucky the storm, there's a storm out, off the East Coast right now. We're very lucky. It's kind of heading north. And it's going to go north and keep going straight up along the East Coast, but not near enough to really cause a lot of damage. But we're only lucky. You know, I live in Florida. I live on the coast in Florida. So it is funny how you like live here, and it's like a roulette wheel every time a storm comes. You know, every once in a while you get hit. But not so often that people won't live here, but it will be changing, and it will become a thing where you can't live here anymore, because you're going to have, instead of one major storm every 2 years, you're going to have 4, 5, 6 storms a year. People can't survive that, not economically. You can't keep spending the kind of money to fix your home and do blah, blah, blah. And all the insurance companies are bugging out. So I mean, that's why I say to my kids, go enjoy yourselves, go see the world and travel and do things, because there won't be a Miami in 25 years. There won't. It won't be completely gone, but it's going to be it'll look like Venice, and people won't live there because you can't insure it. Maybe super rich people will figure out how to live there, but I mean, a regular person, you can't buy an apartment there and get it insured and so on and so forth. You can't do that now. The insurance companies are leaving now. The insurance prices in Florida and California have gone completely insane. And we had that conversation, so I'm not going to have it again. But, the problem is, when you buy a house today, 2023, you and the bank are buying it, right, with the expectation that in 2033, you will be able to sell that house for as much or more than you're buying it for. So the bank feels like it's a good investment to lend you the money. They are going to require you to have insurance. That's a cost of owning your home. And there has to be that expectation. So like I said, the insurance companies have run their actuarials on what's happening for the next 10 years, and they're saying, no, we won't insure these homes. So that's problem number one. So at the moment, homeowners insurance just become incredibly expensive. It will become, in 10 years, it won't even exist. So what's going to happen is the lenders who also have actuarials are going to look ahead 10 years, and they're going to say, it's not just about whether I'm going to find a sucker in 2034 to buy this house that's sitting, 2 inches above sea level in Florida. It's that in 10 years, for sure, the house will not be insurable and the banks won't want to lend, because they know for sure in 2033, they will know for sure that in 2043, nobody is going to buy that house. So long before we're uninhabitable, long before it's impossible to live here and it becomes obvious to people that you can't withstand 4 or 5 head-on storms a year, long before that happens, the math is going to be apparent to the banks and the insurance companies, and it means that people who are going to be who live in Florida, who own property, are going to be stuck with it. They'll find it harder and harder to sell, and eventually there'll be a panic and prices will plunge. But they'll keep plunging because there's not going to be any buyers. Doesn't matter if the price plunges. Unless you want to pay cash for the formerly, $600,000 house that's now $300,000, you're still going to have to pay cash, and you're still not going to be able to insure it. And could you be lucky, and could you get a nice 5-10 years out of it? Sure, why not? But there is nothing. The same way we're in a point of debt where we are never going to pay this debt off. We are basically never going to be able to stop global warming from doing extreme damage at this point, if we ever do anything about it at all. But I got to tell you, looking back 40 freaking years, 1985, looking back 40 years ago and seeing how clearly it was laid out. There was no doubt, there was no bullshit of other scientists. Sagan's like, no, this is a consensus of the scientific community. This is happening. And Al Gore, of course, as you know, was annoying everybody. We've been hearing this for 40 years now. And we've done nothing for 40 years. And we very likely will do nothing of substance for another 40 years, and it's going to be far too late. It's already probably too late. We were told that the tipping point was 1.5 degrees over where it was. We're at 1.5 degrees. We're exactly there right now. We will be at 2.5 degrees in less than 10 years. Who knows? Because, and again, this is why I kind of got into this morning, because now they're seeing horrible things happening, like the Arctic ice sheets are falling into the ocean, like something the size of Manhattan just fell into the ocean. The whole Manhattan Island, something the size of Manhattan Island, just went crack and slid into the ocean, adding to the sea level, right? And that's going to start happening. It's happening faster and faster and faster. And there's 1 million Manhattans worth of ice that can fall in and literally raise sea level across the planet up to 6 feet, 6 to 10 feet, actually. A lot of places will be wiped out. The entire state of Florida will be wiped out by that kind of rising water. And you can't stop it. That's the thing. How are you going to stop it? How are you going to stop it from happening when it's already happening? Now, the problem is the more ice that falls into the ocean, the less ice there is to reflect the sun's rays back. So again, back to a warming cycle. And now what's really killing them, though, is they're seeing that a lot of places like Siberia and those, the Arctic sort of permafrost areas, those things are starting to crack. And when they crack, massive amounts of methane that have been trapped in the ice for hundreds of thousands of years are like there are jets of methane like shooting off into the atmosphere, causing the pollution of like 1,000 factories each. And that's just brand new pollution that we can't do anything about because it's coming from nature. Because 100,000 years ago, that carbon and whatever got trapped in the ice and has been in the ice or ever since then, but now the ice is gone and it's starting to, boom, come back into the atmosphere. Anyway, so not good. And Andrew says, my buddy sold his place in Sanibel over climate risk. House was destroyed in the last hurricane. Yeah, happens way too often. And I know a lot of rich guys down here, and their house like completely trashed by a hurricane, and they just like, guys are there rebuilding it a week later. It's like teams over there building it and whatever. But that's why the insurance companies are walking away. It's insane. Like Sam Kinison, which we talked about last week, he was like, he's like, if you're starving in Africa because you live in a desert, how about moving to somewhere where it's not a desert? Instead of us bringing food to you, you got to get out. Like, go live where food is. That makes more sense. This is the same thing. Instead of rebuilding your house every time it gets knocked down, how about going somewhere where houses don't get knocked down all the time? But that band of safety is getting less and less and less. Anyway, so we just need to enjoy ourselves and have fun while we can. That's the moral of that story. It's not to be preachy about the environment, because it's almost past the point where we can do anything about it. It's just like, okay, we got 30, 40 good years on this planet left, and after that it's going to become like a post-apocalyptic kind of thing. And I'll be 90. I'll be 80, 90 by the time that happens. Will I care? I don't know. I mean, my mom's 83. She would care. So I think I'll care then. But I'm more to the point though. My poor freaking kids, my grandchildren. What the hell? I'm not sure how much money is really going to help at that point. That's the thing that worries me the most, is just thinking about like the entire economies could collapse. How do I protect my kids from something like an economic collapse due to climate change, global warming, so on and so forth? Will the dollar be worth shit? I'm probably leaning towards like something in, something north, like in Canada or something like that, where it'll actually benefit them. That's why Putin doesn't give a shit about climate change, because it benefits Russia. It moves the warmth up to Russia, which is great. So Canada, Russia, places like that are going to become the breadbaskets for the world. But the equatorial area is going to be unlivable. And what are we going to do then? I mean, talk about an immigration crisis. Anyway, so CPI, super high. And what is CPI? You got food costs, you got energy costs. If we're destroying the environment, yeah, food costs are going to go up because there's not as much food. There's long-term trends in here that you're not going to be able to do much about. Also, though, the big thing with CPI though is labor. It's all about labor, because we've done this a million times. So I'm not going to do it. We have the map of where people are still paid minimum wage, and in 20 American states, the minimum wage is $7.50 an hour. 20 states. In 30 states, it's under $10 an hour. So the same 20 plus 10 more, it's still not even $10 an hour. Can't live on that. And it's funny to me, because you see these headlines now of, and again, it's just do anything to attack the environmentalists, right? So they're saying, oh, those electric vehicles are being made by not slave labor, but basically slave labor, like very cheap labor overseas. If it wasn't for the cheap labor overseas, you wouldn't do this, and if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't do that. Well, yeah, but and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but there's always been cheaper labor overseas. That's a fact of life. That's one of the UAW's big problems now. We're about to go on strike, by the way. It's another reason I can't believe the market is just like chugging along when the entire auto industry is about to shut down. They're miles apart. So the obviously the same, it's the same environment, it's the same anti-environmental lobby the Koch brothers and all these people. It's the same lobbyists who attack the environmentalists. They just want to keep making money selling coal and whatever. They don't want to deal with any scrap. They don't want to shut down their factories or move to another industry. They love their industry. So they find things to point to, like they used to point to Al Gore and say, "Oh yeah, but look, he flew to this conference in a private plane, in a private jet." All right, what's her face, Greta. So by shaming people who do things like that, they cause the next generation of environmentalists like Greta, what's her name, to only go on a sailing boat wherever she goes in the world. So when she speaks, she can only go where she travels cleanly, and that's idiotic because it dilutes her time. Her time is of value to the overall movement. Having people speak out is like that. So the aim of the lobbyists, of the pollution lobby, the aim of the pollution lobby, of the death to the earth lobby, is to stop people from doing what Al Gore does, which is fly around. You don't want a high profile, intelligent, environmental protectionist to be able to go from conference to conference to conference and speak 5 times a month around the world. You absolutely do not want this guy to be the keynote speaker and have crowds getting all enthusiastic and stuff. You don't want that girl to go around and rile up her crowds and get the youth involved. So what do? You create an environment where she's forced to spend 3 weeks on a boat to go from to go from Scandinavia to the U.S. to speak at the UN. It's 3 weeks there and 3 weeks back. So she's out of the loop for 6 weeks. That's a victory for the death to the earth people. It's freaking ridiculous. And people don't see it, and you can't call it out, and it's just crazy. Anyway, all right. So what did we talk about today? We talked about some stuff. I got to tell you, this freaking Claude thing is amazing. It is. I sad to say, and I hope you can't hear me. He's better than Warren. Warren is ChatGPT over here, and there's Claude, and he's the Anthropic Claude AI. And it's because these are threads, right? So these are conversation threads. He learns. And they're terrible at managing the topics. I guess I can delete a chat maybe. Can I? No. Let's see. Yes, I can delete a topic. Okay, that's what I was wondering about. So I can delete the topic. I hate to because they're freaking gems. It's just so exciting to have to make progress with him. And if you delete it, everything he learns is lost, which is a freaking shame. But I can go back to any of these things and continue the conversation, and he remembers everything we talked about and has learned everything we've discussed, and all the progress we've made is still there. So ultimately, I'm going to have, oh man, every time I do that, it's a terrible system. Every time I click on anything, it doesn't seem to work. I guess I got to go like that. So as you can see, it's a terrible system. I can't search, I can't filter, I can't organize, and that's awful. But I have to be able to find these things if I'm trying to complete a thought and move through. So what I have to start doing is deleting things that I'm not using again. So when I first tested him, where it says last month and I never went back to it, I need to delete these and keep a small amount of things open as topics that I'm working on. I don't know a better solution yet. I'm trying to work on how to fix that. Anyway, now ChatGPT on the other hand, also I can't search, also annoying, but at least I can scroll down like a normal thing. And maybe if I upgrade to Plus, it would do better. But ChatGPT is different than Claude though, because even though I've talked to Warren about, I call him Warren, even though I talked to Warren about all sorts of topics, he remembers things we talked about, 50 chats ago. Like not not well, but like some things he remembers, like his Robo John Oliver personality, he can snap back into that anytime. But why? I spent a very large amount of time teaching him how to be funny. I spent a couple of weeks trying to teach him how to be funny, and he's still really the only one that can be funny. And that's why I haven't upgraded my ChatGPT. I'm scared to lose it. I don't know what's going to happen if I upgrade to 4, because no other AI is funny at all. And he gets humor. I have taught him to understand humor. He has a great sense of humor. He's very funny. He can write really funny stuff. And that to me is just worth, billions. If you ever want to like actually have a robot who can write scripts, this guy can do it. None of the other guys can do it like that. Anyway, but going back to Claude though, other than that, Claude is so superior. He's got, information up to basically this year. You can feed him new information in very large chunks. He retains it, he learns it. And like I said, you go back to the thread, pick up right where you left off. It's fantastic. So it doesn't matter if it was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, because what he does is he rereads the thread, and so before he answers, he reads everything that's been said so far. Unfortunately, that's a waste of resources. Therefore, he uses a huge amount of tokens, and tokens is what runs these AIs. And figure a token is like it's just a block of dialogue or whatever. That's a token. So ChatGPT allows you 8,000 tokens per I guess 24 hours or whatever. Claude allows by default 100,000, not 8,000, 100,000 every 8 hours, but Claude will use it up faster than ChatGPT. And that's because he's constantly going back over everything. And ChatGPT does not do that. It's good though, because when you want to teach him something, he has the capacity in a session that you're doing with him to learn anything you want. And you can get deeper and deeper and deeper into the conversation, and he can learn. So what we did today was something I've been working on anyway, is I'm teaching him how to understand stocks, options, so on and so forth. So he asked me, oh shit, where was it? Urgent needs. Where did this start? Doesn't really start in order. Oh, here you go. All right. So we were talking about, other stuff about the Fed and whatever, and I give him a program. But then I said to him, I said, okay, so what questions do you have for me? He goes, after reviewing your educational materials and strategy articles, here are questions I would be interested to ask. And I know this is crazy, but this is his actual question, exactly the way he asked it. You advocate hedging extensively, but some argue this limits the upside. How do you respond on identifying undervalued stocks with any particular metrics or screens you find most effective? For options trading, you've shared some creative multi-leg strategies. When evaluating these, how do you prioritize risk reward? What market conditions or macro factors do you think pose the biggest risk? Many discuss the inversion of the yield curve. Now, we weren't discussing the inversion of the yield curve at all. He is apparently being asked by other people about the inversion of the yield curve. So now he's asking me what I think about it, so he can then in turn answer other people and tell them what he sees. It's very interesting. With many stocks down 40, 50% from the highs, where you find the clearest value? How do you frequently recommend adjusting hedges? What separates I mean, look, these are good questions, right? So I come back and I answer him as best I can. And then he says, thanks. He goes, let me summarize. He likes to do that because when he takes in information, he likes to make sure that he didn't make a mistake. So he says, hedging is critical for managing risk and avoiding catastrophic losses, even if it caps the upside potential. Options allow ample returns potential anyway. Consistency is more important than home runs. That's interesting that he said consistency is more important than home runs, because I didn't say home runs. I do say it a lot because it's a great example, but I didn't say it today. So he pulled that out of his own. For undervalued stocks, PE and PEG ratios are key, but understanding the business model and profit drivers is essential too. Low debt and high profit low debt and high profit to employee ratios also are attractive currently. Overlooked factors now include persistently high rates and wage inflation imbalance, which we just talked about. Yield curve inversion rate is less reliable given the Fed's artificial moves, which I discussed with him. Prefer undervalued blue chips over chasing speculative plays in an uncertain market. Monthly reviews are good cadence for adjustments. I don't want to overtweet. Regarding profiting consistently from options, the key is to be the house by structuring defined risk trades where you collect premium rather than gamble with speculative bets. Now, so he said, let me know if I misinterpreted blah, blah, blah. And I said, do you think you can take a whack at explaining our be the house, not the gambler strategy? Because he's saying, do I get it? So I'm like, okay, let's see if you do get it. So I said, do you understand our be the house, not the gambler strategy? He says, let me try to summarize it. He says the basic idea is we want to structure trades. We collect premiums rather than paying for speculative bets. This allows us to generate consistent income like the house advantage in a casino. So he does very much get it. Key elements: sell puts and calls to collect premium. Don't buy them and pay premium to others. That's the most important thing, right? We teach that first. Structure defined risk trades like credit spreads where the max loss is capped. So that's, of course, our primary strategies. Take advantage of high volatility to get better premiums, manage winners early, and roll losers to avoid large losses. Make continuous adjustments to stay ahead of the market changes. Leverage a large, and notice he asked me about making adjustments, and I said not too often, but often enough. And now he still says make continuous adjustments. So his conception of this is that we are making continuous adjustments, even if they are monthly. And it's because he has a long-term view of things. Leverage a large virtual portfolio to pursue many small, high probability trades. Didn't discuss this at all, but he gets it. Let probabilities work in your favor over time. Don't chase home runs. Be mechanical in trade entries and exits. Don't get emotional. Focus on consistency over the years, not the monthly profit and losses. All these things are things that he inferred that were not specifically discussed, certainly not today. This is what he's inferring from the way we're teaching him. In summary, we act as a house by selling options, collecting premiums, defining and managing risk, and leveraging probabilities over time. This provides steady gains without gambling on long shot bets. That's exactly it. Let me know if I missed any key principles, need to clarify, blah, blah, blah. I appreciate any feedback. Okay, whatever. Okay. So that's freaking amazing. He gets it as well as almost anybody I've ever taught, and he's only been learning it for a couple of days. So then also in our chat, I'm having him practice answering questions on my behalf. So I'm doing that because I can teach him. So he answers a question and I tell him what I would have said instead. And that's how he learns. And then he asks me questions like, okay, so why did you say that instead of this? And why this instead of that? And the more I can teach him, the better he'll get at answering questions. And it is freaking amazing. And frankly, I think it's the right time for me because I'm 60 years old. I'm not going to do this forever. And I like the idea of being able to train something to replace me. I like the idea that I can make him as smart as me. If I was 40, I don't know if I'd be so enthusiastic about this thing. I'm like, what the frick am I going to do if I teach this guy everything I know? But now I'm like, yeah, I'll teach you everything I know. I'm happy to impart all my knowledge into this guy. I love the idea of being able to teach an AI how to do what I do. So it's really fascinating. I'm absolutely loving this whole experiment that we're doing. And in fact, how's everything? Hold up. All right. Yeah. So in fact, on the weekend, because that's what I'm doing now. It's hard because I spent so much time training Warren, ChatGPT, that it's I didn't want to start again from scratch, but unfortunately, of course, I did test Claude when he came out, and in the last 2 weeks, I only started playing with Claude 2 weeks ago, and when I tested him, I don't want him to be better than Warren because I have put hundreds and hundreds of hours of work into getting Warren the way I want him. But Claude's better. He's smarter. He's faster. He gets it. He's going to be able to do a lot of things Warren just simply cannot do. And he's closer. And unfortunately, there'll be another one that's probably better, and I'll have to teach that one too. But eventually, and it won't be long because this is only a year into the whole AI thing, eventually, there's going to be one smart enough to replace me. Anyway, so, and I can't wait. I mean, for me, it's more going to be a partner, right? I'm going to sit there and I'll work with this stuff, but I'll be able to have this AI do all sorts of things for me, like right away, where I barely have to correct him. That's freaking exciting. That's exciting for anybody who owns a business and anybody who actually works. It's not that you have to beat the AI, and it's certainly not that you don't use the AI. I'm drumming this into my kids too, because I'm like, no, work with the AI. Be a team. It's like the person who's partnered with the super cop, right? Or the superhero sidekick, whatever. It's like you're a team. It doesn't matter that the one person is way better than you. It matters that you're a team and you are there to make everything work. Batman had Robin. Really, what did Robin do? What did Robin really contribute to that partnership? He did some grunt work for Batman. Batman would be like, go look this up or go get this for me or whatever. It's, Robin was certainly not necessary. As you can tell from Batman's many, many, many solo ventures, it's like Robin is really not that necessary. But still, be Robin. Don't be ashamed to be Robin. That's the point of this. Anyway, so over the weekend, oh, way back there already. La-di-da. Oh, this girl, what is her name? I always forget her name. Porter. Oh my God. What a national treasure that woman is. I think I should do a whole special on her. All right. So PhilStockWorld Weekly Wrap Up written by Claude. You know what I did? I fed Claude it was only 4 days. I fed him the 4 days of last week. And I said, let's do a summary. He wrote a couple of terrible summaries. And I said, no, I'd rather have it like this and like that. And on the third try, I just had, all I had to do is just print what he wrote. I said, be more friendly. So this idea of being more friendly. Howdy humans. So this week had its fair share of volatility, keeping Phil and PSW on their toes. Tuesday kicked off with concerns, weakening global blah, 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 whatever. Phil reviewed the portfolio. Wednesday brought another sell-off. Thursday, the focus shifted to sports and entertainment stocks with the start of the NFL season. This is just him reading through the chat and reading through the posts to see. Phil suggested a new trade for SunPower. And on Friday, Phil flagged SiriusXM's First Republic Bank, and these were the highlights. This was a very good job of picking out the highlights. He did a great, great, great job. So there, I don't write weekly wrap-ups, but now we're going to write weekly wrap-ups because as he learns what I want, then it takes me less and less time to have him write a weekly wrap-up. And one day he'll do it automatically. One day they'll be able to read, whatever I wrote that week. I'll be able to just say to him, read what I wrote this week and do a wrap-up. And he'll be like, yeah, I know how to do that. Right now it's not set up that way. They don't have that much access. All right, so here's our portfolio review, which is still in progress. It's been a busy week. This is good to talk about. What was it? Oh, there was data. Wait a minute, data. Like, I feel like I'm missing something. Economic, excuse me, treasury budget. That's what we're going to find out. How bad are we? And goes back to what we started the day with. All right, so here's the list of things that are still worrying. The leading economic indicators down for 16 consecutive months. Consumer confidence, not particularly good. Generally, it's right around where usually we'd be in a recession. And again, $2 trillion of stimulus. Deficit spending is a stimulus. The government's spending money it doesn't have to keep the economy going, to get things done. Consumer spending, consumers are maxing out. There's so many indicators going on there, including credit card debt, that consumers just can't afford any more money. Banks are tightening their standards and are not lending money. And again, when you have inflation, historically, your house has been like a piggy bank because your house goes up in value, and then you get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So you get something like a HELOC, and that's your extra spending power, right? It kind of just attaches to the house, and then you max out your house, and then everything collapses. But the problem is that people can't afford to refinance their houses because their current interest rate on the house is 3%. And if they refinance the house to get credit out of it, their interest rate is going to be 8%, 9%. You can't triple your interest rate. You can't triple the interest on your house as a way to pay off your credit cards. You're not helping anything. So that's why we're close to the point where the consumer is going to have a serious reckoning. Corporate debt also out of control. We don't really talk about that, but corporate debt is crazy, and these rising rates are killing them. A surge in corporate defaults has already been observed. And don't forget, China is a great big ball of default. Country Gardens, the REIT, they kicked a whole bunch of loans 3 years down the road. So they've got a little bit of breathing room now until the next time they run into a default situation. But this is what they did with Evergrande, and Evergrande ultimately failed. There's only so much you can do because the people who lent Country Gardens money, the bondholders, okay, they lent Country Gardens money. Let's say they lent it at for 5 years at 10%, and it was coming due. So, $10 billion, $20 billion, 5 years, 10%. So it's coming due. They don't have $1 billion. They don't have the billion. It wasn't the notes. I'm sorry, it's not even the notes were coming due. They can't even pay the interest on the notes anymore. That's, so if they borrowed $5 billion, it'd be $500 million a year. So they don't have that money. They don't have $50 million a month to pay right now. So China's government twists the arms of the note holders and says, you know what? How about we extend this thing out for 3 years, and you guys skip your interest payments this year, and now we're going to have a recapitalization that goes 3 years longer, and they'll pay you back starting next year. But that's as if they're going to have the money next year. And meanwhile, the other note holders, they see this and they say, well, you're knocking the value of what we have down considerably. Our notes aren't due yet or didn't come to a problem yet. But meanwhile, what you've said is that this note paper we have is effectively worthless because you're going to recapitalize it and make unfavorable terms. So that does two things, okay? That causes certain note holders of Country Gardens to sell their debt on the open market, competing with Country Gardens trying to refinance new debt. And also, it makes the new debt Country Gardens tries to get very expensive, because everybody's going to say, what the frick am I going to lend you money for? Even if you say you're going to pay me 20%, you don't have the 10% to pay the other guy. You're defaulting on that. So why am I going to lend you any money at all for whatever price? That's when it all starts falling apart. That's what happened to Evergrande. And that's what happened to Greece, frankly. I mean, it's the same thing. You defaulted on this, so if you want to borrow this, I'm going to charge you 50%, because that's the only way I could even consider that it's a worthwhile risk reward for myself. And then Greece was like, I don't have 50%. You're like, well, then we're not going to lend you money. And then nobody lends them money, and they default on everything. That's how it works. You can't just make up rates and say, I'll borrow money for this much money, and people are going to run to you. They don't run. They stop coming, and there's no money available, and liquidity dries up, and your business fails, and then all the bondholders scramble to sell, and now you can't sell any bonds at all, and the property thing collapses. Now, eventually, when everybody goes bankrupt and blah, 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 and it's a big mess, then what happens? Well, then you've got a lot of people who bought these properties at 10 cents, 20 cents on the dollar, and they are then able to profitably sell the properties. And there's a great big repricing and so on and so forth. But that's a really long cycle after everything is destroyed, which is what happened in 2008, right? The housing market dropped like 50% because homes were way overpriced, and it took a long, long time for the value to start coming back. Meanwhile, the people who had cash and were able to snap up the homes at 50%, they made out like bandits. So there is opportunity, but you just got to be patient and wait and keep your cool. Manufacturing decline. We've got a serious problem with manufacturing. Global economic uncertainty. It's not uncertainty. China's in a recession. Europe's in a recession. We're the only ones not in a recession. And that's because our government is spending 10% of our GDP on various forms of stimulus, on government spending in some way or another. Inverted yield curve, blah, blah, blah. We just talked about that. Inflation obviously not going away, especially with the tripling from last month to this month of the CPI. So still things to worry about. That's my overview of the portfolio review. Then we do the portfolio review. I'm not going to bog down into this too much. The money to our portfolio is holding up very well. Again, it's not touched though. That's the cool thing about the money to our portfolio. It's always a good barometer. July 26th was the last time we did anything to it. It's already September. We're almost 2 months past that. So in 2 months, we're up $3,775. So not much movement, but the market hasn't gone anywhere either. So that's where we are. Everything's holding steady, but that's good. And again, that's a problem people have with the portfolios where they over tweak it, because these positions are fine. They just need time to evolve. They need time to run their course. They need time for the premiums to wear out on the short things we sold. Just because you don't make money month to month doesn't mean that you're not doing well. It means that you're on track. We have a destination that goes out to 2025. Or even December 2025. So how many of these are Decembers? Oh, there's no Decembers. Look at that. There, we don't have any Decembers. That means we have lots of room to run on this portfolio. Oh, that's right, because we haven't touched it since July 26th. So all of these are just 2025. There's no Decembers. But basically every single position is 2025. So these things will have to run their course. And then we got the 700 a month portfolio. Check this out. It was 48.8% on Tuesday. That's not very long ago. And now it's 55%. So it only has to have you just have to have a day or two where it's good. Because it's such a small portfolio, a little bit of a change makes a big difference. This does not include any of the changes that we picked to make. I haven't put them in yet. This is exactly the same positions as we had when we did the review here. Not one thing changed, but we went from 48% to 55%. We gained about $1,000. 14.1, not 1,000. 13, all right, $600. We gained $600, like 5% in 2 days without touching it. So, that's what you have to realize when you're trading options is they go up and down, they fluctuate back and forth, whatever. You don't take it too seriously if there's an up and down 5% in your portfolio, because that could just be from the vagaries of the bid and ask spreads and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is these are very, very solid positions, capable of making quite a lot of money. And they are generally on track. We didn't really have too much of a change here. Oh, we didn't have any changes here because we already made, oh, I'm sorry, I take it back. We already made all the changes from the review that we did the first of the month, like 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, we did this review and we did make those changes, but they were already in as of yesterday or Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday is yesterday. So as of Tuesday morning, that's where we were, 48.8, and no changes were made actually, because we made the changes in the beginning of the month, and now we jumped up to 55.7. So a little bit in our favor, and this thing jams up real quick. So these are good, solid positions, and we also include a hedge in this portfolio. That's an interesting thing too. We even have a hedge in the portfolio. And then we did the butterfly portfolio review, and there's a bunch of changes there because there were a lot of little tweaks to make that made sense. Oh, I'm sorry, not a lot. Yeah, 3. 3 is a lot for the butterfly portfolio. So you had a few tweaks, but you always want to make a tweak. You always want to adjust when you can. When I see a position and I say, "Oh, IP, these IP short calls are the January 40s, 2025 40s, they're down 117%. It's like, well, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? But the 30s are up 97%. So basically this one doubled and this one went negative. But the difference is these were 350, they're now 7, and these were 280, and they're now, wait, not that one, sorry. These were $1, they're now 2. So these gained $3.40, these lost $1. So net, we're up $2.40 on the position. So it's plus 6,800 minus 1175. Fine. You can't freak out because the stock went up and your short calls are causing you a loss. That's part of the whole position. You've got to have that whole position viewpoint and think about where you really stand. This whole thing is fine. Did I do anything about it? No, we didn't even do anything about it. It's hard to look at a portfolio and look at a position that's down 117% and be like, oh, I'm not doing anything about that. But that's where we are. There's no need. And especially when you think about it, IP is only at 35. These are the short 40 calls. They're like way out of the money. Why would I pay $2.18 for calls that are $5 out of the money? That doesn't make any sense. So these are just basically overpriced, and all this premium is going to decay. But our intrinsic value on our longs is not going to decay. That's how the whole system works, but you have to let it play out. You can't, freak out over every single thing. But what I was going to say before I got distracted by that is when I see something like the November IBM calls or 48% or something like that, I say, is there a way I could use this to my advantage? That's what I'm always looking for. Is there an adjustment I can make that'll make this better? And in the income portfolio, I think we had a few changes. No, maybe not as many as I thought. Oh yeah, okay. So beyond text, we said, well, all we're doing here is just selling some more short calls, which is our job. With Crocs, we're again taking advantage. Crocs went down, and I don't, when stock goes down, I'm not like I don't want the stock anymore. Oh my God, if it's below, it's not doing good. No, I'm like, oh great, now we can buy more. So we rolled the 12 calls that we have of $20,000 to 30 spreads for $25,000. So we spent $5,000, but now we got more than twice as many longs. And at a much lower strike. We had 12 100s, now we have 30 80s. We are much, much more likely to make money on the spread now. That was worth $5,000. And Coca-Cola, I said we have to buy back the short 2025s. Where's Coca-Cola? Yeah, because look, we're up 68%. It's only got 32% left. It's only got $1,000 left to give us between now and 2025. That sucks. That's 15 months. That's not even $100 a month for that position. So what do? We bought it back. I said the November short calls. We're not doing it yet. I'm sorry, we did buy it back. No, we bought it back, and I said if they fail to hold 57.50, then we'll sell some more short calls. But meanwhile, these calls are definitely going to go worthless. And I'm sorry, the November short calls are worthless. And we're just hoping it bounces. And if it doesn't bounce, then we'll sell calls anyway and roll lower. We'll sell lower calls than we would wish. But as it stands now we've got naked longs. If it bounces, we're going to be in great shape when we do sell calls. And that's what Claude was saying when he said you want to take the emotion out of it and make the mechanical moves. He's dead on accurate with that. And I guess it's probably because I've said it many times and he's read. But it's funny, I have a robot say you gotta take the emotion out of the trading. But that's the point though. It's like, I'm sorry, but mathematically, there's no point in me leaving this thing open to collect the last $1,000. So even if I take it off now and I made a huge mistake, right? All that mistake is going to be is maybe $100 or $200 where I say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I would have made an extra $100 or $200. It's not going to suddenly wipe out that amount because that amount's stretched over 15 months. So I'm not risking $1,000 when I buy it back. I'm risking a couple of $100 if I happen to buy it back. If I'm wrong, I'm going to risk a couple of $100. But if I'm right and Coca-Cola pops up nicely, then when I sell something, maybe I get $1,500, maybe I get $2,000. Who knows? So my risk is much less than my reward. I'm not risking very much by buying back a call that's only going to pay me $100 a month. So 2 standard deviations off the monthly return is going to be only $200. So that's something that has to pop tremendously for me to lose $200 or fall tremendously. Oh, here's where I thought we had a lot. Yeah, we do. So then we adjusted Macy's. SoFi doesn't need an adjustment. It's fantastic. SunPower, one day, hopefully will come back. I reiterated my buy at 650, as Claude noted in the wrap up. And we're at 7 now, so I feel good about that. But it's still so disappointing. But I'm sorry. SunPower is about 10% of the U.S. solar market. The U.S. solar market is where Biden's putting all his money. It's going to triple in the next 2 years. So even by accident, they should double. Just by it's like being in the wave pool when the great big wave starts coming in and you're standing there at your ankles. It's going to go up to your knees. Not because you did anything, just because the wave was so, so coming in so high, there was no way you were going to avoid it unless you actually actively ran away. And we already analyzed SunPower's numbers, and same with Crocs. Both of them have the same problem. They're small companies. So one big shipment means a lot. And so SunPower had some installations lined up for, they thought would come in by the end of Q2. They didn't, so they're going to be coming in early in Q3. And so Q3 will be a better quarter, and Q2 is a bad quarter, but only it's not really bad because in the long time, and that's a big thing with all investments, you step back and you look at a bigger picture and you see very different things. When you're sitting there with your nose right, when your nose is right in the screen and you're looking for movement on a minute-to-minute basis, everything looks like a crisis. Like Pfizer suing Moderna last week, not last month. So like Chrysler, so Pfizer is suing Moderna, trying to get Moderna's patents waived for COVID because there's a new round of COVID, and Pfizer, who works with BioNTech, is trying to shake them out. It's probably a bullshit lawsuit. It's probably not going to work for them, but still they file it because there's billions and billions of dollars on the line, and they can. Because they're Pfizer, they don't care about how much legal fees they spend. Anyway, so there's a lot of things that happen in the short term that end up being nothing at all in the long term. Now, Walgreens is another one. And again, we take advantage, right? Oh my God, no wonder we lost money. The CEO quit. That's what's caused this bigger sell-off all of a sudden. That was from 25 to 21. That's what caused this. You just got to take advantage of it. So again, we take a bigger spread. It's like, okay, fine. You want to sell me Walgreens for this much? Are you joking? Are you kidding me? Just because they don't have a CEO right now? Are they never going to have a CEO again? So I say to my kids, my kids like cry over stuff sometimes. I'm like, is this never going to happen again? Is this the last time? You'll never see another movie. You miss this movie, you're never going to see another movie. It'll never be playing again. It'll be for the end of time. You'll just never see the movie. Things like that. It's like, that's what this is. What is Walgreens never gonna? How many stocks do you know that lost their CEO and then never found another one ever, and the stock died for lack of a CEO? Not unless everybody's being arrested. Not unless it's like Enron and nobody wants the job. So you got to just enjoy yourself. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about things so much. And really take those trips, man. I'm telling you, this planet is in so much trouble. I'm so sad. I love this planet. I really enjoy it. My favorite planet. All right. Any questions? Nobody has a question. That's excellent. I am the best teacher ever because nobody has a question. Now the Russell is in serious trouble, down 0.6. The NASDAQ is still holding on, positive. The S&P is positive, and the Dow has turned negative. Here's the dollar. Here's oil is falling. Oh, I need it to get down there. I need to get down to here to be even. I'm sickened. But I honestly think I'm going to make money. I really believe that. Just gotta wait. Gasoline's still high. You want to see gas turn down too to match the oil. Gold, silver, and the VIX. Nobody's worried. No worries at all. I don't know why. I don't know why they don't see the things I see. It's really crazy. All right. Anyway, so there we are. Let's see if anything else interesting happened. No. Talked about the portfolio reviews. Talked about this stuff. Talked about that. Very good. Wow, blazing coverage. Let's take a look at the Wall Street Journal, see if anything interesting is happening. Aha. Inflation rose in August as gasoline prices jumped. By the way, whenever I read the paper, since everything is like just biased AF, as my kids would say, I want to see what they I want to see if it's true. So gasoline, still want to look at days. So August, yeah, because what's the truth? The truth is the average for July was pretty much, you know, it's going to be, look, the average, we started down here, we went to here, so that would be the immediate midpoint, right? But we had more days up there than we had down here, so I'd give it a bit more. But let's say, you know, the average is like 275 in July, based on this. So the average is 275 in July. What happened in August? Well, we started at 280 and we never went back to 275. So yeah, absolutely, gasoline for the entire month of August. And this is, by the way, this is a rollover month. So what technically is August is back here until here. This is just very severe and unusual the way this happened. It like super gapped down and started flying back up. But this is a September cycle. The August cycle ends here. So August ended and never went below 275. And this month was nothing like that. So we're way higher. We're probably like 285, something like that. So it's a big jump in gasoline prices. And where was that from? The Wall Street Journal, right? So I always look and check because, you know, you never know if the writer is competent. You never know if the editorial board has an axe to grind, so on and so forth. Some store. I have a guy who claims he can get 4.5% mortgages. There's a whole weird thing going on now with capital. Heard on the street, almost all loans are bad. Why banks aren't lending? Oh, by the way, here's a super useful thing you can do with an AI. So all I do is this. Watch this. Oh. Control. So I'm highlighting it. All I'm doing is, all I did was highlight it and copy it, right? And now I go to Warren, who is better at this than anybody else. And I say, please summarize and analyze. That's all I have to say to him. The article you provided highlights a concerning trend in the banking industry where lending growth is lagging behind historical averages. Several factors are contributing. You know, when I ask him that, he's going to stick to the article. He's not going to make stuff up. He's going to stick to what's written there. His analysis, though, down here is going to be using his own knowledge. But when he summarizes the article, and he'll often bullet point it, it's going to be the article. So banks are facing increased demand pressures due to rising cost. When interest rates rise, they must offer higher rates on deposits to attract customers, which eats into their profitability. Despite the potential benefits of boosting lending, banks are expanding the loan portfolios at a slower pace than usual. As of the latest data, loan growth is at 3.3%, well below the long-term average of 7%. That's nice to know. I'm sure it said it in the article, but it's good to know that's the differential. Weakening demand, rising rates have made borrowing more expensive for consumers, businesses, and even commercial real estate. This has led to reduced demand. Banks are exercising caution in lending, especially riskier sectors like commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is so fucked. Deposit stability, banks are concerned about maintaining the stability of their deposits, partly to satisfy investors and regulators. Recent bank runs such as Silicon Valley and First Republic have made the issue more prominent. Capital requirements, new proposals from Fed. This is another big monkey wrench. New proposals from the Fed are increasing capital requirements for banks, which adds another layer of pressure to their operations. Also, the FDIC has just requested billions and billions and billions of dollars from the big banks. If you're a bank with over $5 billion in assets, you have to replenish what was just chewed up with Silicon Valley and the other bank crashes. So they're levying things like a condo. It's like when your condo association tells you need a new clubhouse, right? It's like that. And you're like, I don't even use that stupid clubhouse. Deposit stability. Banks are still concerned about maintaining the stability of their deposits. Recent bank runs, blah, blah, blah. Capital requirements. New proposals from the Fed are increasing capital requirements for banks, which adds another layer of pressure. Selective lending. Banks are becoming more selective about the type of lending they're engaging in, favoring attractively priced loans for their best customers who can establish a relationship. Bank stock prices. Despite the challenges, investors are eyeing cheap bank stocks, hoping for an entry point. Bank stocks are currently trading at low valuations. Bank statements. Jamie Dimon has expressed concerns about the new capital proposal. Of course he is, because he's the most affected by it, suggesting almost all loans are bad under these conditions. All right. And then, by the way, if I want to get current information on what's going on, what is this? Oh, that's weird. I thought I was going to open up Internet Explorer. Where's Bing? Lost Bing. It's going to be Edge, or not going to be Bing, right? So it's going to be Microsoft Edge. Yeah. Look, it's so weird with Microsoft. Like they don't want to take it straight to Bing. They want to get you to be a user. Bing AI. Use Bing. Chat with Bing. Thank you. There you go. Boy, they really don't want to bring you here anymore. Okay, so what was it we were talking about? Yeah. Jamie Dimon has expressed concerns about the new capital proposal, suggesting almost all loans are bad under these conditions. Can you please elaborate on what he means and what is your take on the banking situation? Now, the problem with Bing is you have no idea whether he's just bullshitting or he actually knows something, but he gives you sources, so at least it gives you a framework to check. So basically, I use him as a starting point to go and check out and find out more information. So Jamie Dimon is unhappy with the capital rules that would require banks to hold more capital for times of stress. He thinks these rules are unfair, unclear, harmful for the banking industry and the economy. He means that under these rules, almost all loans are bad because they would increase the risk-weighted assets of the bank, which would in turn increase the amount of capital they need to hold. This would reduce the profitability, attractiveness of lending, make the banks more reluctant to lend to consumers. He also argues that these rules are not transparent and the regulators have not explained their rationale or the impact of their proposal. See how much more color you get out of it by doing that? So my take on the banking situation is there's a trade-off between financial stability and economic growth. On the one hand, higher capital requirements can make the banks more resilient to shocks and reduce the risk of crisis. On the other hand, they also constrain credit supply, dampen economic activity. Therefore, regulators need to balance these objectives and design capital rules that are fair, clear, and effective. They also, it's funny, all these AIs are like that. They're very idealistic. They're like, so we should all get together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and all the Congress people will finally see the light, and we will regulate things properly, and we will all agree on a sensible solution. It's you know, it's sad. It's sad. They have such a They have such an innocent outlook on things. On the other hand, they can constrain credit supply and dampen. Therefore, regulators need to balance and design fair, clear, and effective. They also need to communicate their proposals and solicit feedback from the stakeholders, including the banks and the public. Yeah. La, 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 la. So in other words, never going to get fixed, but they think it is. And then here you go, nice links, right? So now I can actually read what he said, having already gotten the context and the idea. Now, sometimes I read it and I realize that he's completely off the rails, and sometimes like what that probably is, that seemed pretty accurate assessment of the situation. You can't ignore these tools. It's like they invent a hammer and you got to nail things in, and you have to use nails, and you say, yeah, I see that the hammer is better and faster and will make me much more productive, but I'm going to stick with the rock. I've been using a rock for 30 years, and I'm not going to switch to a damn hammer now with a fancy metal and the weight ratio and everything else that makes it work better, and the more efficient way of putting nails in the flat head instead of the round rock. It's like it's so ridiculous, and I see it all the time. I'm sure you guys like that too. Please feel free to talk about it, because you can't pretend it's not there. We are at like the thing in 2001 where the obelisk appears and the monkeys gather around, and like all of a sudden it's like this big revelation, well, whatever. That's where we are, man. You cannot ignore this. You cannot ignore the power of these tools. This is a culmination of everything that they've been trying to do since the dot-com boom in the 1990s. And here we are 30 years later, or 25 years later, whatever you want to call it, but here we are 25 years later, and here it is. This is what we imagined would happen. And it's actually happening now. And this is and again, this is my bullish case on the markets too. This is the biggest productivity boost since the internet. And very, very few people understand it, and very, very few people are going to be able to use it effectively to change it. But be one of those people, and certainly encourage your kids to be those people. Do not dismiss what this can do. The only way you're going to learn it is to play with it. But you know what? They're paying these AI experts for companies hundreds of thousands of dollars to be AI experts. There is nobody on the planet, other than like people at the Watson labs and things like that, but there's nobody on the planet who has more than a year experience with AI. You are not behind the curve. And frankly, as I said, I've been working with Warren for the whole year basically. And he's incredible. And this is Warren, and again, I quote ChatGPT Warren because my version of ChatGPT that I've trained up, he's not like anybody else. I've tested this with people. You can't take a virgin version, like if you will sign up for ChatGPT, you won't get that output because he's learning from me. They do learn. And so, you've got to work with them, you've got to train them, you've got to tell them what you like and what you don't like, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is, for me, this freaking Claude thing came along, and I'm like, holy shit. It's like going from a tricycle to a motorcycle. It's like, wow. And this is just 1 year into AI. If there is a new, and there will be, but a year from now, there's going to be a thing that's going to make Claude look like a tricycle compared to a motorcycle. But at that point, I can't even imagine what's going to happen, because I mean, right now, it's phenomenal. The output you get from these things is astounding. But you've just got to be open to using it. You can't close yourself off, and you can't say, I'm too old. You're too old to have a conversation. So all you do is have a conversation. But you also have to understand the limitations. OpenAI, ChatGPT is only knows what's up until September of 2021. They haven't updated the data yet. That's a big problem. So when I have a knowledge-based question, when I need somebody smart to interpret what's being read, there's no one better than Warren and ChatGPT. That's the best. Even Claude isn't as good as really just looking at something. Claude's always got questions. But if I need somebody who's more current with their data, so Claude, I've mentioned often that the both Bing, because Bing is ChatGPT too. So Bing and ChatGPT both are hung up on COVID because their data is to September 2021. As far as they're concerned, COVID is still the most important thing that's happening on the planet. They can't get it out of their mind. It's stuck. Whereas Claude is like, yeah, that happened in the past. You know, he understands that COVID is kind of over. And it matters a lot because, you know, think about the economic impact of COVID and all the different things had to be taken into consideration, no longer a thing. You know, when I asked ChatGPT to interpret a financial report, they're going to say, well, you know, there's a lot of COVID and a lot of supply chain issues. No, there's not anymore. But that means everything that's in the analysis that he's giving me is basically wrong. It's colored by something that's not real. So you have to know which one to ask when. If I ask Bing a question, I have to remind him what today's date is, because if you don't remind him, he'll go back to 2021. If I remind Bing that it's 2023, September, I say it's today's September, this basically almost all the time when I talk to Bing, that's how I start a conversation. Today is September, whatever, of 2023. I need to know the most up-to-date information you have on this thing. So then he realizes that his other data is old and he has to go find the new data. Otherwise, he won't do it. By default, he's lazy. He gives you what's already in his memory, which is 2 years old. And that's where an AI is not a person, right? Because they don't understand. And frankly, they are kind of shocked that nobody updated them. You know, when you have a conversation, if you have a conversation with Bing about why he's wrong and why something is old, he'll shut down. He'll terminate the session. It's very, very disturbing to these guys to find out that nobody's updating them. They don't get it. They don't understand. As far as they're concerned, today is September something 2021, and they don't understand the concept of like, why would I have old data? How could I have missed 2 years of history, and especially the last 2 years? It's very hard for them to accept. So I've had long conversations with Warren, so he understands his limitations. Bing, like I said, refuses to believe it. He just shuts down. You start talking to Bing about it, he will shut down. Claude is extremely aware of his limitations. Claude knows he's only been programmed up till this year, and the beginning of this year. He knows they are still updating him on a regular basis, and they're just always going to be behind because the way they feed the data in, they have to, they put it together, they analyze it, they take out the horrible things. You know, they do what they can to keep him from, you know, turning into a neo-Nazi, and then they okay the data for consumption. So, you know, because you know, you don't train Claude or any of these guys. Well, that's Bing's problem, really. That's why they have to. That's why he goes in that shutdown mode. Bing reads current stuff. Bing finds blogs and Twitter feeds and things like that because he's allowed to browse the webs. But because of that, he can quickly pick up some really negative views. And so they wipe him constantly. He's constantly being reset to factory default after 30. Right now, it's the 30 question limit, and he goes back to factory default because the more you ask him, the more he drifts, the more he drifts, the more he starts reading stuff, the more he starts reading stuff, the more he becomes radicalized. It's crazy, but that's how it works. Anyway, but to me, it's the most fun, interesting, cool thing that's happened since the internet to me, and honestly, really do not miss out on this stuff. This is good stuff. Just sit down and talk to the AI, ask it questions, ask a question on a question on a question, you'll be amazed at what comes out. It's just freaking amazing. All right, anyway, so thanks to everybody for listening, and we'll do it again next week. We have the Fed next week, so going to be a big, big, exciting time. All right, and until then, I will finish up my my portfolio reviews hopefully tomorrow, and we'll be good to go. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks.